Hi everyone, welcome back to Learn With Me. I'm Deborah Hanson, and today we're going to be talking about AP Human Geography, specifically Unit 1's 1.4 Spatial Concepts. So today we're going to go through all the essential knowledge that you need to know for 1.4 of Unit 1. So I have two separate videos that I normally do, one with all the essential knowledge really described and explained, and then one with the key terms, which you'll also find on my channel. So everything you need to know for 1.4. So these are the key terms that we need to know for this section of Unit 1. And like I said, on a separate video, I have the definitions, examples, some study tips on how to remember them, but it is super important to learn the key terms in AP Human Geography as well as in AP Psychology. Actually, lots of APs, the key terms are really the key to the five, but especially I would say in AP Human Geography and AP Psychology, super important to know them. So however you decide that you want to learn these key terms, whether it's the old-fashioned flashcards or Quizlets or whatever, you need to be able to define them and apply them, not just know the definition, but have examples and kind of know how to use them on test day. So first of all, thanks again for everybody who has subscribed to the channel already. It's wonderful to see the numbers going up, and I really appreciate it. And all the comments and emails are fantastic. Keep them coming. I am so happy to answer any questions that you may have about this unit or any other unit. If you want to see the full slideshow, the workbook, and everything else that goes with this Unit 1, you'll also find the link below that will lead you to my Teacher Pay Teacher store where you can find all of that in full detail. Okay, let's get started. So today I'm going to be looking at the CED question for 1.4, and the question is define major geographic concepts that illustrate spatial relationships. So we're going to talk about in detail how can we define all of that and how can we use it on the AP exam. So let's start by breaking down one of the most important skills in AP Human Geography, the spatial thinking process. So what is it? Spatial thinking is how geographers analyze where things are located and how they're arranged and why they're arranged that way. It helps us understand how people, goods, and ideas move between places or why sometimes they don't. Here's the purpose. It explains why some areas are highly connected while others are isolated. Spatial thinking also helps us to see how technology, infrastructure, or natural barriers influence those connections. So why does this matter in AP Hug? Well, because so many concepts like diffusion, globalization, or urban planning rely on understanding spatial relationships. Without this lens, it's really hard to explain how things spread or how they connect across spaces. Here's an exam tip for you. When an FRQ question asks, explain how X influences connections between places, that's your cue. You're being asked to apply this spatial thinking process. So think about movement, connections, and patterns across space. This skill isn't just for maps. It's a way of thinking that shows up all over the AP Hug course. So now let's look at another important concept in AP Human Geography, and that's spatial interaction. So what is it? Spatial interaction is the movement and exchange of people, goods, services, and ideas between places. So how does it work? Interaction increases when places are well connected and easily accessible, and when there's low friction of distance. And we're going to talk about that in the key terms on the other video, meaning it's not hard, expensive, or time-consuming to move between those places. Why is this important? Spatial interaction helps us explain things like trade routes, migration patterns, tourism, and even how culture spreads across the globe. Here's an example. Think about global shipping routes, like manufactured goods moving from Asia to the Americas. That's spatial interaction in action. Okay, I'm going to give you an AP tip now. If an FRQ is asking about movement or exchange, it's probably testing your understanding of spatial interaction. So think about what's moving, where it's moving, and what makes that movement possible or difficult. Okay, so now let's talk about connectivity. This is a key concept that helps us understand how places are linked in a network. So here's the definition. Connectivity is the degree of direct linkage between one location and another. The more connected a place is, the easier it is to move people, goods, or ideas in and out of it. How does it work? We measure connectivity through things like transportation systems, communication networks, and economic ties. Think airports, highways, internet cables, trade agreements. These all create and strengthen connections. Why does it matter? Well, a place with high connectivity becomes more important in a global system. It can influence trade, migration, information flow, and much more. Here's an example. Look at airline hubs like Dubai or Atlanta. They're connected to dozens of global cities, making them critical points in the world's transportation network. I live in Dubai. I know we are definitely a big hub. So here's your AP tip. High connectivity often reduces the effects of distance decay. Even if two places are far apart, they can still interact frequently if they're well connected. So when you see a question about movement or global links, think about connectivity and how it makes it all possible. Okay, so here's a classical concept in geography. It's called distance decay. This is the definition. Distance decay is the idea that the farther apart two places are, the less likely they are to interact. As space between location increases, interaction usually decreases. How does this work? As distance grows, so does the time, cost, and effort it takes to cross those places or to connect to those places. That means people are less likely to travel, communicate, or trade over long distances, especially when there's no strong connection or reason to. Why is it important? Distance decay helps explain why towns form where they do, how people choose where to shop, how cultures spread. It's also the key to understanding why some ideas or trends don't reach areas as quickly or at all. Here's an example. Think about shopping. Most people are going to choose the grocery store that's 1 mile away from their home instead of the one that's 10 miles away from home. That's distance decay in action. So here's your AP tip. In diffusion models, nearby areas usually adopt innovations first because they're closer and it's easier and faster for ideas to spread. So whenever you see reduced interaction due to distance, remember you're looking at distance decay. Next up, friction of distance. This is another key concept in human geography. Friction of distance refers to the cost in time, money, or effort of moving people, goods, or information from one place to another. The further the distance, the more friction or resistance you face when trying to connect these locations. How does it work? As distance increases, so does the cost and effort required to maintain interaction. Think about how much harder and more expensive it is to ship a package across the globe than to send it across town. This friction can reduce how often or easily places interact, unless technology helps reduce it, like through faster transportation or the internet. So why does this matter? Friction of distance influences trade, communication, commuting, and more. It can limit opportunities, especially in areas with poor infrastructure. So for example, a company might avoid international shipping because it's just too expensive or time consuming. A good example is shipping heavy goods internationally. It's usually much more costly than just transporting them locally. That's friction of distance in action. Here's an AP exam tip for you. Friction of distance is often paired with distance decay. Think of friction as the cause or the obstacle and distance decay as the effect, the decrease in interaction. Okay, so now we're going to look at time-space compression. Time-space compression is the idea that improvements in transportation and communication technology make people feel closer together. It's not the actual distance that changes, it's the time and effort to connect across the space that's reduced. How does it work? When we invent faster ways of travel or communication, like airplanes or the internet, the world just feels smaller. We can talk, trade, or travel across continents much more quickly than ever before. Why does this matter? This process is a major driver of globalization. It allows for faster cultural exchange, economic transactions, and political interactions across the globe. It makes global connections feel local. Here's a simple example. A Zoom meeting between New York and Tokyo happens instantly. Something that once would have taken weeks through mail. That's time-space compression in action. Like we've said before, I'm sitting in Dubai. Where are you sitting? Let me know in the comments section. I'd love to hear where you are. I'm far away, but I'm also on a YouTube, and you're watching this YouTube in your city, and I'm making this YouTube in my city in Dubai. So time space compression. AP tip, use this term whenever you're explaining the rapid global spread of ideas, goods, and trends. It's especially helpful when discussing the impact of technology or human interaction and cultural convergence. Okay, so let's keep going on how those key terms are applying to this unit. We're going to talk about accessibility. This is a key factor in understanding how and why certain places thrive while others remain isolated. Accessibility refers to how easily a location can be reached. The easier it is to get somewhere, the more accessible it is considered. How does this work? Accessibility is influenced by things like transportation options, think roads, railroads, airports, as well as the quality of the infrastructure and how connected a place is within the larger network. Why does it matter? Places with high accessibility tend to attract more economic activity, tourism, and even migration. When it's easy to get to a location, people and businesses are more likely to invest in it. So, for example, a coastal port city with highways, railroads, and an airport is far more accessible than a remote village in the mountains, even if the actual distance isn't that different. It's all fairly logical, I would say. Actually, to be honest, I think this whole AP Human Geography course is extremely logical. If you know the terms and you can apply them and you get some examples, it's all super logical. Here's an AP tip. A place can still have high accessibility even if it's far away, as long as it's well connected by efficient transportation systems. And that's why this term is so useful when analyzing urban development and regional planning. Okay, so now we're going to talk about networks, and this is really important in AP Human Geo as well. I know that I say this a lot about these terms, and they all are important, really, but some are more important than others, I guess. But anyway, a network is a system of interconnected places that allows movement through transportation, communication, or trade. These connections shape how our ideas, goods, and people flow from one location to another. How does it work? Networks create pathways that allow interaction. Roads, flight routes, fiber optic cables, even shipping lanes. These are all part of global networks that connect people and places. Why does it matter? The structure of a network can either increase interaction or limit it. Well-connected places benefit from better access to resources and opportunities, while poorly connected areas can be left out of the global flows. A great example is the internet. It forms global communication networks, letting people on opposite sides of the world talk, share, and trade information instantly. Your AP tip for this one is that networks does come up a lot on the AP exam, especially in FRQ related questions. So especially related to globalization and diffusion. So understanding how your networks work can help you explain how culture, goods, and technology spreads. So the last key term we're going to talk about in this section is the concept of flows, a powerful tool in human geography that helps us explain how people, goods, ideas, and information move across the world. A flow is simply the movement of something, whether it's a product, a person, or a piece of information from one place to another place over space and time. So how does it work? Flows are influenced by the push-pull factors. We're going to learn this key term a little bit later in other units, like jobs or conflict, by the quality of infrastructure, and by political boundaries. In other words, flows don't happen randomly. They follow specific pathways that are shaped by human and physical geography. So when you think push-pull, I mean, it's pretty logical. What's pushing you and what's pulling you to move or to displace, I guess. So why does this matter? Studying flows helps us understand migration patterns, trade routes, and how culture spreads. It's essential in understanding globalization in the modern world economy. So for example, think about the global flow of smartphones, for example. They're manufactured in Asia and they're shipped to consumers all over the world. That's a flow of goods on a global scale. Here's your AP tip. Always identify what exactly is flowing. Is it people, goods, or ideas? Make sure to explain why it's happening. That's a key to earning the points on the AP exam. Okay, so let's just kind of like sum that all up and make some connections ourselves. Networks plus connectivity enables flows. Accessibility and time-space compression enables reduced friction of distance. Distance decay leads to interaction decreases without these factors. So that's all the essential knowledge that will answer the CED question, define major geographic concepts that illustrate spatial relationships. So that is 1.4 spatial concepts. Hopefully you found that helpful. If you have any questions, please put them down below. I'm so happy to answer them. If you haven't hit that like and subscribe button for me, please do so before you leave. Thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time.